a high five.
Packers jumping around. They rush 4. Plenty of time for John. Now squeezes, steps up in the pocket. LA can run. Inside the 10. Head first. He falls off the 5-yard line.
Manning out of the gun. Manning lets it fly. It's caught by Thomas. There's the record for Peyton Manning.
Rushing 4, ball comes out of the hands of Newton. It's on the ground and still on the ground. Picked up by T.J. Ward at the 4-yard line.
Here we go. First snap of the overtime. The Broncos have been in 3 overtime games this year. They won them all. Got him at the 40. It's Thomas at the 50. Stiff arm got him 3 to the 30, to the 20. Thomas to the 10. Denver's going on to New England. They win it on the first.
And welcome into the show, everybody. I'm Undungus Creevy, joined by my co-host Glenn Hauser, Mr. Boggins, and Richie. And today we're also joined by Bri and Cameron, because this is a big episode. We got lots of news to get to today. Now,
I don't know. It was pretty boring to me.
Yeah, very boring. Make sure you're also tuning into our other podcast, And Nothing Rhymes with Orange and Blue podcast, that airs every Thursday at 7654 on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. How's everybody doing on this glorious Tuesday?
Everybody talk at once.
I think we're in for some exciting off season, and we're already off to a roaring start. So I'm doing fantastic.
Yeah, I'm doing really well. This is going to be a really pivotal time. I think there's a lot of arguments to be thrown around that this may be the most pivotal offseason in Denver Broncos history, with obviously the news that rolled in before our show, and obviously with the stuff that's going to be the future of the head coach. It's going to be a pretty big offseason for the future of this team.
I was saying earlier in the season that this offseason is going to be like insane, but I wasn't expecting it to happen so quickly. Like the way the Fangio thing kind of seemed like it had a potential to linger, and then they're just like, no, out of here. And then now the ownership thing that we thought was going to be like kind of dragging out to like March time, and now, nope, out of here. So like I'm super excited. So many possibilities, and Peyton Manning's going to own our team.
Yeah,
sick, bro.
Well, they did just come out with that the news that the court or the judge denied what is that thing called, the Karen right Turner or whatever. Yeah, right of first refusal. And that was the last thing kind of in the way of the sale. And they said there's 6 bids, and there's at least 2 groups. One is led by Manning, and one is led by Elway, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't have expected the two of them to join forces. I don't think the egos could team up there for sure. But
I could be wrong, but they don't like each other, right? Elway and Manning, or at least not fans of each other.
I won't go that far.
I wouldn't say that that's the case, really. I think that it's kind of subjective, how they view each other. So,
yeah, I'd say it's a little bit of a mutual respect still for each other. But I think it's one that it's also, at the end of the day, it's a business, and you have to understand. I think that from Elway's point of view and Manning's point of view, you're looking at it with both of them. I mean, they very well could, buy the team, just themselves with an ownership group. Elway obviously probably has the better resume, if we're being honest. With him himself being an owner of the Colorado Crush, and then obviously him having the time with the Denver Broncos as the executive role, so he probably could swing it.
Bri just popped off camera because she had to pick her boogie or something.
Wow.
I got to mess with you anytime I can.
Your mic's not on, but I'm sure whatever you said was just.
I had to censor myself. And
yeah, the FCC was going to come at you.
Now, so obviously the big news.
It's a kid's show. I wanted to make sure she can reach you.
Yeah.
That's right.
So obviously the big news coming out of this weekend is Vic Fangio has been fired as head coach, and Shurmur and McMahon are out as well. Now, there's been a lot of things said on Twitter, and a lot. I saw a couple Shelby Harris tweets where he was not a fan of some of the things that were being said about Vic Fangio no longer being coach. So I did kind of want to address, like, at least here in MHRT, like, nobody wants a coach to be fired. Like, we want all of our coaches to succeed. We don't want them to be fired. Now, at the same time, Vic Fangio turns out he wasn't the right person for the job, but he's a great person. He is a great coach. He's just not a great head coach as of right now. But I will say, I believe that he left the Broncos in better shape than when he came to the Broncos. Vance Joseph kind of dragged a lot of the Broncos down, whether it's in the direction they were heading or the personnel they had on the team. And I think that Fangio was able to kind of turn that and started heading in the right direction. So I will at least give him that. He is a good coach. He did help turn the Broncos in the right direction. He just wasn't the right head coach.
All I'll say is I hope he doesn't end up in the AFC West. That's all I'll say. That's nightmare scenario for me.
That's a true potential that could happen.
Like the Chiefs or something? Oof.
Yeah.
Chargers.
Yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
But the Chargers.
Yeah.
Or even the Raiders. If Harbaugh gets that job,
I don't think he'll work under Staley.
But he was.
Hey, I already asked if the MHRT guys wanted to pool their money together and go in on a bid. I'm just not sure, like, if $150 is going to do it.
Plus Rich has only Canadian.
I'll put in $2.
Yeah, Rich only has Canadian dollars, so that doesn't even count.
But Vic was he was Harbaugh's defensive coordinator, so that would be an interesting pairing again.
Yeah, it would. And I think the one thing that, with Vic and because it was thrown a lot as far as when he was fired is, where does Vic rank as far as, the coaches and all time? Like, we can all agree that Vic Fangio is not the worst head football coach in Denver Broncos history. I know that recency bias can have a tendency to, creep in and stuff like that, but he was not. Just unfortunately, with the performance-based business, if you don't succeed in 4 of the 5 areas, and that one particular area, what he was really darn good at, which was the defensive side of the ball. I mean, you're looking at it from the standpoint that, unfortunately he had to go, but the defensive side of things, I mean, he was pretty dang good at it was like almost like the reverse of what we wanted out of Vance Joseph with this whole type of defensive perspective and everything. Like Vance left it at a really bad place, but Vic Fangio left it in a place where, honestly, I'm okay if the next head coach or whatever doesn't touch that side of the ball.
Cam, I have to agree with you there. I was on like a 70-30 split on whether or not I thought Vic Fangio needed to go. I think Pat Shurmur and Tom McMahon did, but Fangio is a tremendous defensive-minded coach, and I think that he's done a lot of correct things. And there's a couple of things that just really stuck out that didn't feel like the right fit for what this team wanted to do. And I think that was apparent with what George Payton has said in the past. He enjoys working with Fangio, and there wasn't like a huge disconnect where people wanted him gone. I just think as a staff in general, they really created this monster that couldn't be rolled back. I didn't celebrate the firing, just like you said, Mike, it's not a great look. And I think Broncos fans can be upset and be frustrated. I'm not a fan of laughing and celebrating when people are fired. And there was a lot of jokes out there, and that's all well and good. But these people are human, and we're all human, and we all make mistakes. And people coming for your head with torches and all of that, it just didn't leave a good taste in my mouth. So I don't blame Shelby for putting that out there. But that's what Twitter is. It's a big vacuum of opinions, and we're not all going to agree. That the great thing is I can ignore everything I don't like.
Yeah, well, and then there's, especially with Shelby Harris, like, I would say arguably his best years have been with the Broncos with Fangio. I mean, he got that new contract under Fangio. I mean, Simmons, his game picked up. You've got Callahan, he's been playing well. PS2's been playing well. Now you got all these other linebackers like Cooper and Weatherly and Young and Browning. Like all these people on the defensive side of the ball had their best seasons when Fangio was there. So again, it's not that he's a bad coach. And a lot of coaches don't work out the first time as far as head coaches go. It takes them, 2 or 3 tries. So
Peyton said he's the best coach that he's ever worked with. And Peyton's been in the league for some time. So, I mean, that says a lot.
And actually, that says a lot, even with him working with Mike Zimmer. That should let you get,
Who's also a defensive-minded coach.
Yeah.
Dude, I loved Fangio. Like, our defense hasn't looked that good in a long time, and it was really cool to watch it. And you just we're hoping the whole entire time that the offense would connect. Something would click to where it would work out and make him look good. Like, I was even at the point where I was like, even if Drew Lock was in there, at least you ride or die with him, and either looks really, really, really bad and it kind of takes the look off Fangio's side of things, but. I don't know. It's a bummer to see, but I know he'll be successful wherever he goes.
But it's worth noting though that there are reasons still why he was let go. Like for instance, with that offensive side of the ball and with the staff, Bri and I talked about it before. But it's when with Fangio, he was just at times just way too loyal to a fault, way too loyal. And unfortunately, when that crept in, or when he needed to make the type of changes that he needed to make, a la Tom McMahon. The Pat Shurmur thing, there's an argument why they went and got Pat Shurmur, because at that particular point in time, Shurmur was the name on the market. And, at that particular point in time, he was a upgrade, even though hindsight's 2020. So it's just but I mean, he should have fired Tom McMahon. And then all during the season, he just started becoming loyal and everything. And so it's just you started to see a creep in. And then obviously with the clock management and decision making of certain plays, and him choosing not to go out on 4th and 9 and against the Chiefs and stuff like that, it all ran together, unfortunately.
Yeah. So we'll kind of dig into I was going to say recap the Chiefs, but screw that. There's so much going on. Who cares?
Yeah.
Well, I do want to ask Bri though, because I had messaged you during the game about the atmosphere, and it sounded like you were surprised how incredible the atmosphere was that day. Can you give us a 2-minute summation on the day itself?
Only 2 minutes.
Okay,
that's all you get.
Time you go.
Right.
I'm gonna waste 60 seconds laughing about this, but so I had predicted over 10,000 no-shows, and obviously we know it was 16. That wasn't surprising. They missed a heck of a game. I had predicted that this Chiefs team was beatable, but then the closer we got to game day, I was actually really concerned about how this game would go, just considering all the injuries and the decimation of the defense heading up to this game. So I think everyone was nervous. I think we all expected a completely different result and a completely different team to show up, but they did what they always do, and they surprised us. Drew Lock 2 rushing touchdowns was the highlight of my day. Whether or not it doesn't have any political leaning for that. That was incredible. I think that really energized everyone in the stadium. There were a ton of Broncos fans, and there was a lot of Chiefs fans. So the day in itself was this roller coaster of I can't believe it's the last game. And we were also excited to still be there. And then what happened was really just exciting to see. I guess it's just a analogy for going into 2022 that there's still a lot of exciting things happening with the Denver Broncos, especially roster and talent wise, that you get to see play out right in front of you. So I think that's what we can take from this, and the Bronco team that we wanted to show up did. I was glad to see Drew Lock had a pretty decent, safe day, and there was costly mistakes. So consistency wise, I was just happy to be there, and regardless of the outcome. So
how did it come to be where you got to meet PS2 and Cortland and Dalton after the game?
So Tori and I had run down as the game had ended. A lot of people were leaving because they do after losses. And we just hung out for a little bit, and we have our ways, and we're able to, get some pretty neat pictures. And that was a memory I will never forget.
Oh, we have the picture, don't we? Or you want to put that picture of
the one where their eyes are closed or her eyes are closed? Which one? Because all it's
for Ted was blurry or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard because they were grabbing. I got to shake Pat's hand, and then he came over and he was talking to us, and then he left, and then he came back and he grabbed our phone and took a picture. Cool. Dalton is really good at selfies. He's just really good at it. So I don't know. It was a great end of season for me. So I know when I posted something about it being a good season, I'm just thankful for everything that has happened. I know it's not the results that we wanted, but it could have been tremendously worse. We could be the freaking Jets. So it's hard for me to complain. I can say there's obvious improvements that need to be made.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that that's kind of like the beautiful thing with, this whole end of the season. Cause I think usually what the players do is they go and they just walk around the entire stadium and then, kind of greet fans, or they go to a certain section. That's probably what but yeah, it was just sort of bittersweet to kind of see it. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, we did see improvement this year, right? I mean, we saw improvement. We saw it. We saw how much this team could grow, but also we saw how much it was the same old, story every single week. And, so yeah, I think it was one that you're always excited because I think that especially with the draft picks coming in and stuff with George Payton, there's always that's so much unknown. But one of the reasons why I think Vic Fangio left it in that better place is because you saw so much growth of the draft picks that we had seen and flourished so far this season. Guys like Quinn Miners and Baron Browning and Cadence, basically the entire 2021 draft class, flourished basically up and down. So it was a really positive year, honestly, with the way that things unfolded, where Vic did leave it in a better place.
Except for my number one rated Jamar Johnson, stay healthy, bro.
EJ wants thoughts on Glasgow's restructured contract. Are we seeing that as more of a just trying to clear cap space, or is that a clearing cap space and also taking a back seat and or fighting for his job?
I think it's a multitude of things. I think when you restructure it to the way that they did, honestly, when they restructured Teddy Bridgewater's deal to roughly that amount of money, there was no guarantee that he would be back that next year. So usually when you put it to that type of length of money of I believe they restructured to $3 million. There was uncertainty that it would be back next year. So that gives the certainty, or this year, I should say, in 2022. So there gives a certainty that he is back. But now the question just sort of remains, okay, well, still with $3 million. Well, heck, if Quinn Miners still goes out and balls out, he can still go take his place. And then that's resulting because of that $3 million that the Broncos can still release him if they need to. And I was going to say, and also too, Graham Glasgow could also play center. He's got a lot of that versatility to play center. So,
I was going to say I saw it was a tweet from Ryan Edwards, and he laid out what he thought was going to happen with the line. He was asked what he thought with Glasgow sticking around, what the offensive line would look like. And Ryan said, Miners will probably be your starting center. So it'd be Bowles, Reisner, Miners, Glasgow, and then whoever the new right tackle, whether it's Massey or if we sign somebody.
That'd be cool.
I thought they were going to stick with Miner at guard. I thought he played really well at guard. And so it would be Glasgow moving to center, and then you still have Reisner and Miners as guard.
I think Miners. Yeah, I think center is much more of an important position, and Miners balled out this year essentially, or at least showed growth more than his draft pedigree. So I definitely think you move him to that spot, so hopefully he can grow into whatever quarterback we get this offseason.
Can Glasgow go right tackle?
No.
I mean, in the replace of, I wouldn't.
I would also re-sign Bobby Massey. Just like I know that there's like we will most likely draft a tackle, but I would still keep Bobby Massey because he was fine this year.
Do you think they stick with Reisner?
I think it's a possibility, but I also think that because of the play and everything that we did see this year, I think he sort of put his spot in jeopardy. I really do. But real quick on Miners, I think if we think back to training camp, Miners was actually the backup to Lloyd Cushenberry at center. Like he was the backup. So I mean, I think the center is still a little bit in play, but I also think that honestly, still. That spot with he taking over Reisner's spot, I think is still very much in question too with that.
Was Miners center at Whitewater?
No, I think he was right guard.
He would have been guard, but the reason he's just so tremendously versatile, and I think that speaks volumes to what he was able to do this season, especially not playing football all of the entirety of last year. For him to come in and be able to be shifted like that, I don't see why Miners couldn't be changed to either spot. Yeah, I'm a fan of the Glasgow restructuring just because you basically save the money you would if you had cut him, and then whether or not you choose to stick with him. I like Graham. I think I wouldn't move on from him. I think I've seen enough. That injury was really unfortunate.
Yeah, you can never have enough depth at offensive line. Or you never have enough depth at line. Like it's straight up. So he saved money. You're going to the offseason with options. Peyton is a big fan of options, it looks like. So sounds like it's good. I can't talk.
Now, how did you think? Do you think it's gonna? No, you stay there. Do you think it's gonna be more likely to sign Bobby Massey or bring Cam Fleming back?
Oh, Massey.
I would say Massey.
Yeah.
The point I was going to make about Massey too, and I've said it before, is that his family actually moved to Colorado prior to him signing with the Broncos. So the likelihood that he would be open to staying with the team next year is, I would suspect, to be very, very high, considering they make that their full-time home.
And he's up there too, right? So he's probably thinking just stability at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, it was I can't remember the name, but the Broncos also had a veteran tackle last year that played really well. I can't remember his name, but I can't. Again, the names escape me, but he played pretty well, and I would have been fine bringing him back. And Massey's the same case.
You mean
for a right tackle,
right?
DeMar Dotson?
Yeah, DeMar Dotson. Yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
DeMar Dotson, and where they easily could have brought him back. And the same case honestly goes for Bobby Massey. And the unfortunate thing is the age. I think that the Broncos probably want to go younger there. But again, to what Boggin said and stuff, like depth is depth, and you can take about as much depth as you can behind that tackle group. With Austin Schlottman's too, and his versatility, being able to go center, guard, and basically tackle too, or whatever. But on that inside, so yeah, you need about as much depth as you can, especially on that inside.
Well, we've seen what happens when you.
Sorry. Go ahead, Bri.
No, I was just saying you see what happens when you don't have that depth, and then you're pulling up your rookie starters and you're getting injuries on your quarterback. So QB protection should be the number one concern and has been an issue for the Denver Broncos for the past 3 seasons. So, and then obviously that limits your ability to score. So it's like this big snowball of what can or cannot happen to kind of make sure the Denver Broncos are in a good spot for next season. Sorry, the cat needed to be.
I knew something was happening when you smiled. Like,
she was
would own a
screaming
black cat.
Yeah. I was going to say, we talked about the center position. I would not even put it past, like, let's just say, obviously, the Broncos don't go down the veteran quarterback route and they decide to trade down in the draft. I would not be surprised if the Broncos would show interest in that Iowa center, Tyler Linderbaum. So just to talk about some depth. So, I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it.
That's right.
So let's kind of kick it back to coaching. We knew that they were going to be contacting coaches or putting in requests on Monday, and we already have 9 so far. Looks like Eric Bieniemy. More now? Okay, well, I've got Eric Bieniemy, Jonathan Gannon, Luke Getsy, Aaron Glenn, Nathaniel Hackett, Jared Mayo, Kellen Moore, Kevin O'Donnell, and Dan Quinn. Who am I missing?
Brian Callahan.
Yes, I wanted Brian Callahan. Okay, Brian Callahan. I'm going to add him on there.
Is that
Daniel?
Yeah, Kliss and Ryan O'Halloran tweeted it just before we got on.
Oh, perfect. I missed it. Thank you.
It sounds like they're the initial interviews are going to be Aaron Glenn in Detroit, and then the two Packers coaches. Starting Thursday.
I don't know about anybody else, but if they're a coach and the Lions is right behind their name, no, you're not coming over here.
I don't know about that because they don't have a lot to work with, and that defense has had stints this year of looking pretty good. So,
but is pretty good enough?
When that's what you're working with, yes.
I know, but okay, consideration is fine, but so here's the thing with interviewing 9 to 10 candidates right this very second. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's maybe 1 to 2 that may trickle through, but the reason those favorites are the favorites is because that's probably the direction you're thinking of them going in. It's not like Dan Quinn is not an eligible participant in this. And then you see them bringing in Kellen Moore, who I love his ingenuity, his young skills and what he's been able to do with Dallas, but he's not in contention for the head coaching position. What I think obviously would make more sense is that Peyton's bringing in also additional people for those coordinator positions. Same thing with Jerod Mayo, who I think is a tremendous leader and would make a great defensive coordinator and still doesn't have the experience to be able to take a head coaching position. I think a lot of those key pieces are there for a reason because I'd put my money on Dan Quinn today.
Yep.
See, I think Mike would be all over Nathaniel Hackett. He loves Star Wars and NSYNC.
I don't love Star Wars.
He didn't argue in sync though.
No, I don't love Star Wars.
I was gonna say that would be me. That would be me. But no,
Sing the first single off of No Strings Attached right now.
But I think that with the coaching search, it's pretty fascinating how quickly Nathaniel Hackett did move up on my list. So, and I think I have Sayer to thank for that because he and I were DMing back and forth about Nathaniel Hackett. But I think that with the head coaching candidates, and Bri brings up a tremendous point with the coordinators and stuff like that, that they may be interviewing some potential places for coordinators of that position. Because I think that that's also one of the biggest attractions to this job is that you could treat it almost in the same way they did Vic Fangio and Mike Munchak. Like, not kidding. Where they brought in Vic Fangio and then they hired Mike Munchak as the offensive line coach. And that was only 5 candidates that they interviewed. And we're talking about 10. And so I think that for the case of the fact that they're interviewing this candidate, I think that you could make a lot of cases to where you could see a promotion for some of these guys, and potential combinations for both, some of these guys. And case in point, I think that you could see, Dan Quinn, bringing in. I'm just spitballing, obviously, and just whatever. But you could see him bring in, say, a Kevin O'Connell, but making him an assistant head coach along with an offensive coordinator title, which would in essence be a promotion. And then at that particular point, would Sean McVay, block that potential move? That's technically a promotion. So I mean, it's just I could see that happen with some of those types of positions.
Does it surprise you that of the 10 candidates, only 1 has been a head coach previously? Dan Quinn?
Yes, it does actually. Yeah,
me too.
It's one of those cases where and I talked about it before, but I'm fine with having a favorite all along. But it's one of the reasons why I've loved this search so much is because even if there's a favorite, clearly George Payton is exhausting every single option at his disposal. And I guess, my shock isn't so much that it's the 10 candidates. It's the fact that it's the 8 to 10 candidates that were released on the very first day, which would, to me, make it seem as if he wanted to get the ball rolling out in front of everybody and, get the search and stuff finalized for a head coach. And then thus resulting in an ownership potential announcement.
Well, don't you think also a lot of those interviews like Bieniemy are for intel gathering? So you're seeing a lot of people just being taken in not only to get an idea of how they interview, but there's there are some reasons why some coaches haven't gotten the look before for a head coaching gig, or why teams aren't very fast to jump on first-time NFL coaches. Doesn't always work out. You got to get your start somewhere. I have to say, though, Hackett has the most notes from me of just like all the pros I was finding with him. He's just not my number one choice. I think he is a great choice. I just don't, unless you're using it hand in hand to kind of make a bid for Rodgers, I don't think Rodgers is going anywhere. But I'm just kind of like very tunnel vision on they're going to need to make the decision prior to the Senior Bowl, right? Before Peyton starts going out there trying to figure out what his draft is going to look like. So it's going to be a pretty clear and quick decision. I don't see this being dragged on for too long. Do you guys?
I don't.
No, it'll be like a 2-week thing. I'm thinking like around Super Bowl time. But I did have a question for everybody, and I kind of know what the answer is, but when you're choosing a head coach, does being specifically a defensive coach or an offensive coach really matter when you're going for head coach? Because there's a lot of people out there like, I want offense, I don't want defense. It's like it doesn't really matter.
Here's the thing, Mike. People are also out there saying they don't want to retread. Well, you know what retread also means? Freaking experience. So I'm sorry if you don't want to retread or you don't want an offensive, defensive minded. That's not the point. The point of the game is you're getting the best person into the position to work with a team and the talented roster that you know that you have, and then the forward motion with all of that. So anyone who's like, I don't really want an offensive, stop it.
Stop it.
Mike Shanahan
screw Bill Belichick or Andy Reid.
I was going to say,
give me somebody in the Belichick tree. He's proven.
Yeah. And I think that right there is just the misconception about this whole coaching search. Like, what is it? Brian Callahan is really familiar with the offensive side of the ball, or Dan Quinn has familiarity with the offensive side of the ball, but that doesn't necessarily make them, a bad candidate. I think that one of the biggest appeals of Dan Quinn is that, and why he checks some potential boxes for George Payton is he's like a CEO, you could say like a head coach CEO for that staff. So he's empowering that staff to, do what they need to do. And so I think that that's the biggest misconception is that if you have a head coach that's willing to trust his staff to put together a core, like Mike, we recently just had Scott Frost revamp our staff in Nebraska, right? Yeah. So you had him. So
she's picking again.
So you had Frost hire a true offensive coordinator for the position, and then you had a defensive coordinator for the position. That I think is the true ideal situation for everything. Is that if you can have a CEO with it. You back out as soon as I talk about Nebraska, Bri?
Right.
Yeah. No, I had to run away, so I didn't make faces. My cat needed out. Sorry.
As if we didn't need another reason for the Cowboys to root against the Cowboys to lose first round. We that would free up two of the coordinators to get sit-down interviews with the Broncos right away.
But isn't that kind of what you would hope they would do is they would get a coach who has one thought, has played and or coached in that area and realm of expertise, and then bring in the coordinators that help round out that coaching staff so you don't have an uneven coaching staff that can't control either side of the ball. You can see what happened this year specifically because of that.
Twice.
Yeah. And honestly, I think that was sort of the beauty of Vic Fangio early on, right? When he was hired, when you brought Vic Fangio on, he probably was going to be calling those defensive plays, but that was the beauty of when he brought on Ed Donatel, right? Because it was just you thought that Ed Donatel was going to probably be that guy. Well, then we found out that Vic is going to be calling plays, which ended up being a huge blessing in disguise because he ended up turning and molding that defense into where it is now and leaving it in a really good place. But at the same time, it's it would be nice to have a true defensive play caller to where the head coach can just really, do what he needs to do and incorporate, clock management and the appropriate things that, need to be done as far as the head coach is concerned.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I was going to say was all during the season, you're getting all these complaints why is Fangio just focusing on the defense? We need somebody that can also look at the offense and handle that side of it as well. So, I mean, when you're looking at least as far as we know, because Dan Quinn has been a head coach before, he is that type that's going to look over everything and then have the coordinators that are going to look after their own side. I don't know about Nathaniel Hackett yet. I like Nathaniel Hackett. I wrote down who I think would be good coordinators for either side. Like let's say Nathaniel Hackett gets the job for coach, I'm thinking he brings in Luke Getsy, the quarterbacks coach that's below him in Green Bay, for offensive coordinator, and I've got Jared Mayo as defensive coordinator.
Do you want two guys who are in positions they've never been in before in a rebuild for the Denver Broncos?
I don't know, but I mean, at the same time, you also want that familiarity, kind of like where Fangio had Donatel. They just kind of follow each other around. I'm assuming that Hackett would want to have that familiarity with his offensive coordinator and bring in Getsy, who he knows.
I think Mayo actually has I was going to say a real serious opportunity at the Houston job if that frees up as head coach. I think he's interviewing for full-fledged head coaching positions right now, and not necessarily
Getsy?
No, Gerard Mayo.
Oh, Mayo, yeah. Well, and then I've got Dan Quinn, and if he goes, Mike McDaniel is OC, and then Mayo again is defensive coordinator. But that's because McDaniel was on staff with Quinn in Atlanta, and so
See, this is what worries me. This is my biggest worry about Dan Quinn. Like, this is my biggest worry with Dan Quinn.
I thought you were saying Mike McDaniel.
Those are fighting words for pockets.
But see, here's the thing. Like, Mike McDaniel has been a name that has been thrown around for offensive coordinator. And, oh, by the way, the Dolphins requested to interview him as head coach.
Yeah.
So,
I saw that. I hate it.
Yeah. So the thing is like, okay, he's bringing on a young brilliant offensive mind of the Shanahan tree. Okay, so if you're talking about it from Dan Quinn's perspective, do you want to bring on? And again, it's one of the reasons why bringing on Pat Shurmur was fantastic, because you're bringing on a coach that he's not going to be a head coach anymore. He's going to be a coordinator, and he pooped the bed. And so if you're bringing in a coordinator, the goal is for you when you bring a guy in like that, for me with Quinn, is that you want that guy to stay there long term, and you're not going to shut him out from a promotion. And I think that's my worry with Mike McDaniel, is that if he brings in Mike McDaniel, which would be a fantastic hire, if he balls out with the Broncos, you're looking at him being that head coaching candidate, thus interviewing with the Miami Dolphins or something.
I mean, that happens every time you have a baller coordinator. Like anytime, like if we went to the Super Bowl, that they're gonna get looks. Like that just happens when you're successful. So I don't look at it that way. And they can always block it the first year. You know what I mean? Like they can be a jerk and be like, no.
McVay did that with O'Connell.
Yeah. Like last year.
Well, Mike Kliss came out with a tweet from Sports Betting about who the favorites are to become head coaches for teams. Right now, the Broncos' favorite's Dan Quinn. I think we kind of assume that. Vikings is Eric Bieniemy, which is interesting. Jaguars is Bill O'Brien. Dolphins is Brian Daboll, and Bears is Doug Peterson.
Fun fact with Brian Daboll is that he was the offensive coordinator with Tua Tagovailoa in Alabama when they were together. So we can maybe connect some dots on that one. But it makes a lot of sense to go Bill O'Brien with Jacksonville, knowing what dumpster fire of an organization that has been.
I will say though, what happened the last time Dan Quinn was with a team that had a Shanahan running the offense? You know what I mean?
Falcons?
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
Sorry about that.
Maybe we can hope that O'Brien gets some personnel duties down in Jacksonville, and we can send a first and a fourth. He's problem solved. Yeah.
So Rich had kind of thrown out a name that I completely forgot about, but Ed Donatel is still with the team. Do we foresee Ed Donatel having any sort of role in a new coaching staff? Or are they just sticking around so that the new head coach can be like, nope, you all can leave?
Yes, I do.
There's options.
I do.
I think there's options, but Cam, you can speak better to this, but I would think that you're not necessarily going to see a lot of piecing together of a head coach coming in and just picking a couple of people to stay behind. How often does that happen?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I do think that, one of the beautiful things about this staff is particularly the defensive side of the ball, right? Like we talked about earlier, So like when you keep Ed Donatel, I think that's sort of that. Okay, you're keeping the structure and the foundation of what Vic Fangio left in place. If you keep Ed Donatel, if you hire on, or even Christian Parker for that matter, I actually think that Christian Parker would be a guy that, frankly, would not shock me if he was in some consideration for a defensive coordinator position for the Denver Broncos, and then at that point, it would be a promotion. But I think
just because you're related to him.
Yes. But I think that Ed Donatel, and it really isn't just Ed Donatel. It's there is so many attractions with this job on the offensive side of the ball, defensive side of the ball, and that staff, that it's just like, if you're a head coaching candidate coming into this, as much as you want to have your own staff picked out for you, or that you want to have your own staff picked out, it's pretty tempting knowing and going in that you have, okay, this type of position group to work with, and this is what they did really, really well in, and we have the opportunity to keep him. Like, case in point, Mike Munchak. I don't necessarily see Mike Munchak as being one of those guys that's going to be leaving, because he's well respected. So,
yeah.
Coach Vic brought on was Shurmur. Everybody else was here. So, to Cameron's point,
Donatel,
it's not unusual yeah, that's true. Yeah, to Cameron's point, it's not unusual to inherit a lot of these, these guys that are already under contract. So,
and Christos had brought up Brian Flores, and then Randy Ankar says, "What about Joe Brady as OC?"
Or Joe Brady?
Who? Oh yeah, that's right, Joe Brady.
Yeah.
Or Brandy.
Yeah, I will say there are a few offensive coordinator positions or coaches that do interest me, or potential promotions for one. Mike Kafka, would be one. There would be quite the promotion. And granted, he's from the Chiefs, and even though it's a promotion, they could still block him from that.
Yeah.
But I do think that Pep Hamilton, I think, is one that I'm really intrigued with as a potential offensive coordinator, just for the simple fact that of what he, obviously with what he did with Herbert, but it's just like with what he was able to do with Davis Mills near the end of the season, that alone is deserving of consideration for offensive coordinator. So I think Pep Hamilton is one that obviously Boggins, the brother from another Mike McDaniel, considering for the position as well.
And there has been a lot of talk about Brian Flores and Doug Peterson and why they haven't gotten interview requests yet. There are some things in the background. I'm not going to specifically go into them on here, but they're easy to find if you look. There are some things in their background that I think could prevent them from being of interest to the Broncos. They might get interviews. I don't know. It wouldn't shock me if they don't.
I think both of them have interviews lined up. The team's not off the top.
Yeah, they've got interviews, just not with the Broncos.
Right.
Yeah. And the thing with Peterson, is, let's just say the Broncos do request to interview him. There's two different things. Like, you would be now bringing on a coach, that would have the head coaching experience and head coaching experience on the offensive side of the ball, which would be a weird wrinkle to all of this, as far as, you bring on a head coaching, candidate of defensive experience. Well, now you have a head coach of offensive experience. So, and also you factor in on the second point that they could interview Doug Peterson whenever they want, because he took the year off.
And there's been reports that he may be coming in, and then there's reports that he's
mixed
not
reviews.
coming in. Yeah, so who knows?
Well, it's really easy to speculate that a person in a position to interview could eventually get the nod, but if we haven't heard from it yet, I don't think it's happening.
I agree with Bri, because that would be the first person you'd go see, the guy whose schedule's wide open.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you got to think, if you're getting asked on the second round to come in for the first time, then you've got to think that like none of the candidates they saw in the first round are going to work out. And so, but that means you weren't their first choice. So
can I ask a question to everybody here though? I
No.
want to know,
No.
All right, we'll see you later.
Go ahead, Boggins.
Okay, thanks. Okay, guys. So I want to know,
screw you guys, I'm going home.
Who is the Denver Broncos head coach in 2022? Like, who do you?
Oh, you stole my question.
Even if you don't like
Travis asked that.
like, who do you think is going to be it?
Who's your favorite for coach right now?
Our
Not favorite.
favorite or who we think it's going to be?
Who do you think it's going to be?
Yeah,
I figured that was the same.
No, that's not the
Okay,
same.
who's it going to be?
Go ahead, Bri.
Dan Quinn.
Quinn.
I don't really think I need to provide too much reasoning for why I think that's the legitimate call, but that's what I've been hearing, and that's what I think is the appropriate fit.
Yeah,
and we've been hearing that for 2 months now, interestingly enough. So
actually,
I think Quinn.
I was gonna say not just 2 months, but 2 years now. With the connections even dating back to what was it? There was a certain job that ended up being linked, and I forget what it was, but they wanted to interview. It's the Falcons, I think, again, but they wanted to bring in George Payton or something, and Payton wanted to bring in Dan Quinn again, and the Falcons said, "No, I'm sorry, we're not going to, be rehiring Dan Quinn." But I think it's going to be Dan Quinn. But at the same time, it's like it's so early to tell because we're doing this on like Tuesday. On the very first day, we just had like 8 to 10 candidates that were requested. So there's a lot to.
We don't got to be right. We just got to have fun with it.
But I do think that Dan Quinn is. Again, we talked about it earlier, but the lone coach of having head coaching experience, that's not a smokescreen. That's legitimate. Like you bring on a guy of head coaching experience, and I think it's legitimate. But I will say I would not be surprised for my own benefit and the way things have been swayed with me with Hackett. As far as a personal favorite, that I would love to see Hackett, get in position to where, he made a really strong impression on Peyton and stole the job from Quinn. But I don't think there's a wrong answer, and I think that's the beautiful thing about this candidate list for me is I don't think there's a wrong answer.
I think there's kind of a wrong answer. But that's not to fight you about that. I just think there's I think there's a wrong answer where I wouldn't go near it.
Well, that.
Yeah, Bieniemy would be my wrong answer.
Well, and more. He's got 3 years in the league. Do you think he knows how to run a team?
But I agree. I agree with. I agree with you on that. But I think that's the intrigue with it, right? Because it's just he's a brilliant mind, and it's honestly to a certain extent like Hackett. He's a brilliant mind, but it's okay, what's the staff that he's going to put together? If he's going to be putting together the type of staff that is elite, then you're talking about a really good formidable staff that got put together. But I think that
Hackett doesn't call plays in Green Bay, does he?
Bill O'Brien is the wrong answer.
No, and that's why some of these guys can move over just even from offensive coordinator to coordinator because if they get upgraded to a play caller even. But I feel like we already have Kellen Moore on staff, and his name is Brett Rippon. But maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, so we've said who's going to be the coach next year. Who is your favorite right now? Your favorite candidate?
Nathaniel Hackett.
That's actually
I'm not even saying coordinator, just candidate.
Nathaniel Hackett for me. I think that he's the stuff that I've been able to see and the stuff that I've been hearing from the offensive players, from David Bakhtiari, who we talked about in The Athletic, and how much, he just loves the guy and he loves the coach, that he is. He honestly reminds me a little bit of an young offensive version of a Dan Quinn, but he's like a Ted Lasso, he's a guy that the guy just he relates.
Doesn't know anything about the sport.
Well, maybe not that regard.
Wow.
But as far as the way that he relates to the players, and I do think that there is some intrigue with him and the way that he does his whole intricacies. And I guess this would be the biggest red flag of all red flags, though, with guys like Kellen Moore and especially Nathaniel Hackett is do not hire an Adam Gase again, or do not hire an Adam Gase. That's the biggest red flag with guys like Nathaniel Hackett and Kellen Moore.
Another thing with Hackett, too, is he grew up with, Paul Hackett being his dad. So he's been in a professional, high-level coaching household for his entire life. But that Washington, was it the Washington Post, or it wasn't the Times, it was Washington Post. They did a feature on Hackett that was so good. It's so entertaining. The respect that he does have from those players, they know that he puts in the time and the effort.
That's a show I haven't heard in a while.
Well, Glenn, just to come off of that too, is something we didn't have last season was the ability to kind of move past COVID in an essential way, where the players were able to get a really good feel of the playbook, and he basically created that digital playbook specifically for his players. Like, the guy's been in the league for 12 years coaching. He knows what his team needs. He knows what his coaches need in order to be successful. He's just got long-standing grit, and I think he seems like a really great candidate, but it's a little Disney for me. So I think, even though I want to say he's my favorite, I think he's a great person. I think he does amazing things for the position that he's in right now. He's not my front runner for head coach.
I will say that, and I've decided this right now because I haven't really had a specific favorite going into it. Or
you can't choose Mike McDaniel as head coaching candidate.
I'm not going to choose Mike McDaniel's head coach. Calm down, Cameron. I will say I will go with Dan Quinn, mainly because he could bring in Mike McDaniel. As I was saying. And
if Boggins spams that meme one more time, I'm muting him.
Just do it anyway. It'll bother him.
So good. Because this roster is built to win now also. So if you go and bring in an Aaron Rodgers, you want someone with experience in there. Do you really want to take a risk on someone that doesn't have head coaching experience or someone that hasn't been there before? You have a roster that's built to win now. You put in an elite vet. You have a coach that has experience, who brings in the guys that he's familiar with, and you make a run. That's where I think their head's at. You don't put in a Zach Taylor, or I guess Matt LaFleur is a bad example because I had Aaron Rodgers, but you don't usually put in a young coach unless it's a full rebuild. Then you're seeing what you got. You don't know what you got. But with Dan Quinn, you know what you have essentially.
Yeah, Val41 Zod, I guess that's your name. Thanks for joining us. First time I've seen that name. Why do people think Denver is hiring Quinn? We're not. I don't know if they think we are, but I would say he's the front runner. Cam, you want to dig into that one?
Well, I was just going to say, it's something we talked about earlier. It's just he's the front runner. We're not really reading or claiming that he's going to be getting a job. It's just the fact that he's the front runner. And Well,
and I think a lot of that has to do with personal history that he has with Peyton. That obviously plays into it somewhat. I'm guessing it was the same with Teddy Bridgewater coming in. Just the personal history that was there probably helped in the decision to bring him in. Same thing with Quinn. Plus, he's the only candidate that's got head coach experience behind him, plus 3 Super Bowl appearances. So,
and he knows George Payton.
And Mike McDaniel.
I was waiting. And he knows Mike McDaniel.
I would have signed off immediately.
Has anyone been fully interviewed? No, just requests right now.
Aaron Glenn, the first one.
I would say there's only the coaches that are in the playoffs can't interview yet, right? They have to wait until bye week.
I believe so. But at the same time, I think back to when the Broncos were in the playoffs when John Fox was on staff, and I think they had 4 different coaches interview that week, for head coaching jobs. I most notably Jack Del Rio and I believe Gase interviewed for the job. And actually, I think John Fox himself interviewed for the Bears job and then ended up getting leaked 24 hours later that he took the Bears job. So it's been done before.
So the bye week team.
No, a question that was asked. Go ahead.
But the teams that are in the playoffs have to get through this weekend before they're allowed to interview. Mm-hmm. There's no bye after this weekend.
Okay, so bye week teams can do it now. The other teams can do it next week. Right. Okay.
That's why the 2 week.
Okay.
window that we've heard will work because even teams that will be in the still in the playoffs will still have.
Could you imagine if you were still in the playoffs and somebody asked you to interview? You'd be like, now?
like right now?
Like, I got stuff to do.
I really appreciate the opportunity, but can it wait like a couple days?
Wait, I have to read this comment because it made me laugh out loud like a silly person. It said we should grab a coach off of Groupon and like
KB82.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, reminded me of the way the whole coaching search has gone down. George Payton's handing out like all these coaching interviews, and hoping that there's a golden ticket in it.
I like it.
Is there anyone who didn't get an interview that you were really heartbroken over?
Go ahead, Boggins.
No, I don't. Everyone can answer except for Boggins. No,
you opened it. You opened it up.
I'm closing it.
Grand
That's
opening.
my God-given right to take it back.
Imagine if the Niners win the Super Bowl and Mike McDaniel is shut out because there's no time for him to interview.
I know. I kind of assumed it was going to be
Daniel led, not led, but 49ers beat the Dallas Cowboys with Dan Quinn this week.
My favorite thing about Boggins right now is he looks like he's 8-bit, like his coming to us from a cruise ship, and you can't. The connection's terrible.
I know. he's our Minecraft. Yeah.
It's like an old Nintendo graphic.
I don't know if there's anyone that I'm disappointed that they haven't, because I kind of expected it to be Quinn and Hackett, and I wasn't really expecting much else. So no, I don't think so. Let me look at the list again. Maybe Dable.
Yeah, that's the one for me. Where I'm not heartbroken, but I was just like, oh, I guess that tells you something.
The problem with Dable is we don't have a QB for him. That's the thing.
So you're operating under the notion that we won't get one.
Well, that's what I was going to say. So if we interview Dable, does that kind of show like, hey, maybe they're looking at like a Malik Willis or something like that?
I don't know. That was a test for Bree. She was supposed to say, we do have a QB.
Oh, Bree!
I'm not allowed.
Wow.
I'm not letting him back in.
Just to see George was talking about connection too. That's funny.
I was going to say, did you leave or was that your connection from the cruise ship?
Okay. So, all right, Bree, so you opened up the window there on that discussion. So who's our quarterback next year?
So in my heart of hearts, I don't think Aaron Rodgers goes anywhere. I don't think Russell Wilson goes anywhere. He who mustn't be named is not a person I want to talk about. So I think that leaves you with drafting mid-range or Drew Lock. And I think they keep Drew Lock because he's the cheap alternative right now for 2022, but he is option D, E, or F. So what happens there is if he's the last case scenario and that's what you have to work with, that's who the starter is going to be, at least for a few games, especially if you draft a QB. So I don't think there's any quarterbacks out there that are ready to hop in straight from this draft class. I'd like to see Pickett, but that could be kind of detrimental. We don't know yet. So, do I still think we have a quarterback on our roster? Sure. But when you get lambasted nonstop because people aren't willing to think that there's an alternative, I don't know. I don't think we get a big name. I think you're going to end up seeing Matt Ryan, who I've been saying since probably September.
Wasn't there a thing that came out and said there's no chance Ryan leaves?
Then there you go. So now you've got what?
Hold on, I got to find it.
Kirk Cousins.
Well, I was going to say like Minshew or a Mariota would be my guess. If it's not like a big name and you're not really looking at the draft for this year, Minshew, then you're kind of stuck with like a Minshew or a Mariota or a Foles or a Dalton or something like that.
Is Minshew a step up from Drew Lock? Do you honestly believe that? Or do you want him to?
I do, yes.
Okay.
For me, we're talking head coaching candidates too that, with the as far as like surprise, I actually think that it was a little bit of a surprise that Todd Bowles wasn't reached out to. Todd Bowles was one I was a little bit surprised with. maybe even Leslie Frazier to a certain extent with the connection of, George Payton and Minnesota. And so I think that there was probably, at least on the defensive coordinator front on that one. But as far as, the quarterback front, I actually think that with the amount of offensive coordinator talent that they've been bringing into these candidate rooms for head coach would honestly suggest that I think that they're still keeping every option on the table as far as who their quarterback's going to be in 2022. So I think that there's still very much this possibility that they could be interested in a Carson Strong, a Matt Corral, or or a Malik Willis, or Kenny Pickett, or any of those guys that is in this draft. And so, and even too, and to circle back a little bit with Vic Fangio, it was just like that was the unfortunate thing. We talked about loyalty, but it was just like that was the unfortunate thing too. It's just like we never sort of got that full closure with Drew, so to speak. And it almost seemed like that was like the key with George is like, now George is certainly like he said, like he's not going to force a certain hand and, tend to go a certain way, but he's going to have a certain favorite in mind. I think that was Drew Lock, but he's not going to give it to certain Vic and, make the decision that he wants to. But I think that George wanted to start Drew from day one. And I think that, from that, I think there's a distinct possibility he's on this roster in 2022. Oh, no, but I don't think that, he may be a starter. But I mean, I think that if you get guys like Baker Mayfield or Aaron Rodgers, there's a distinct possibility that you have that, guy under the wing of Baker Mayfield or Aaron Rodgers that very well could be that guy based on what they could learn from both of them.
I think that if you don't get Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, or like a Matt Ryan, then you're going with Drew Lock. Like I'm not really touching this QB draft. I mean, maybe second round, depending on who falls. But
I was gonna say there's a lot of people that are like Carson Strong in the second.
He's not going in the second. I don't think he's going to go in the second.
Yeah, I think
you don't think he'll last till the second.
I think he's too like NFL team likey. Like he's very meticulous. He's very like Mac Jones, but like way bigger arm. Just like a big processing quarterback. Like he will be.
Rich, what's the salary? Rich, what's the salary on Fitzpatrick?
No, $5.
Does it matter? Doesn't matter. It's Fitzmagic. Bring him in.
It's definitely $5 on FanDuel.
Yeah. I will say though, the Jimmy Garoppolo thing is a tad bit interesting.
No, I don't want to pay like.
But
that's kind of a big trade though, right?
If you're
like that's going to take a little bit.
If you're going mid-tier, you might as well go Drew Lock. Like run the contract out. Like just do that and then just get like a Trubisky or something that's super cheap. Just like
okay,
someone to be around. Like you're not expecting your quarterback. Like the only upside you have there is potentially Drew Lock, and that's even a big if. But like at that point, you were literally going into the draft just to collect picks for 2023 and then reach on a quarterback because you're
okay. But
2022 is going to be better.
But then there's the big question: like, is Drew Lock mid-level at this point? I mean, is Jimmy G a better option than Drew Lock?
Well, your ROI depends on a lot, and it also depends on where you're picking and what draft picks you're using. Like, there's a lot that goes into that decision that's mostly based on cost effectiveness at this point. Don't you think? I mean, it's not, even if I can put my biases aside for a moment, and I think that we all can, and go, what can you achieve with obviously the most cap space, but also not drafting just to draft a quarterback, because that's not going to happen. Right. I doubt the Broncos even choose at 9. And if they do, it's going to be edge. So, so where are we really picking? And if you pick something, is that going to put you in a better spot to perform with the roster you currently have, not the one you're going to have in 2 years? So okay, Fitzpatrick comes in and he's mildly better. He's injury prone, is he not? And if he's cost evasive, then we're hurting ourselves down the road. Is that worth the risk? Is just my question, because I'm risk adverse.
10 mil.
He's my age too. My goodness.
He's also 65. Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, and I've talked about it all year. Like Drew Lock and Ryan Fitzpatrick for me are like they're the same, other than age. Like they play the same.
But you love Fitz and you hate Drew Lock.
I don't hate Drew Lock.
That's not what you've said.
I hated how he played last year. That was it. I don't hate the guy. But it's like, well, and then at the same time, like you look at these last 3 games, he's played well. But can you tell me that he played better than Teddy Bridgewater?
No, but
I mean, they played about the same.
But he does have better chemistry with the receivers.
What?
No, go ahead, Bugs. I need to hear more of your elaboration on that point.
I forgot what I said.
All I heard was wide receivers.
Something about receivers.
Oh, he has better chemistry with receivers. That's why you would keep.
Who, Locke does or Teddy does?
Locke.
Well, it depends because like he had better chemistry with like Sutton, but he didn't but he didn't have better chemistry with Patrick and
over whoever you would bring in. That would be
whoever you bring in.
Here. Like that's why you would have Locke start next year if you weren't getting.
And that makes sense. But it like
I know
is there a quarterback that's a free agent that is a noticeable upgrade over what we have now?
No, you're trading. Okay. You're trading attractive mullets and friggin' maniacs for lock stands. Like, what are you really trying to accomplish by bringing in a similarly tiered quarterback? Like, hope that it changes, but let's not start him in 2022 and then allow that other hedge to start and bridge that gap if he doesn't work out. That's all I'm trying to say is like, yeah, we all want better quarterback play, but if there's nothing out there, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
At a higher salary too, Bri, right? So
at a much higher salary.
Yeah. I mean, you're not exactly going to be bringing in Big Ben and his walker to Mile High. I mean, so I mean, like the
burger and his motorcycle.
The Seattle Kraken lost the Colorado Avalanche, Bugs. Just
how dare you?
At least we don't have play calls like the Giants. Yeah, who wouldn't want to run a quarterback sneak on third down on your 9-yard line? Okay, so let's.
This kid recommended Trace McSorley, by the way, Mike. You need to have a conversation with him.
Stop it. Stop it.
This is a Big Ten message.
Yeah, there we go. So let's kind of. Obviously, we're not in it, but let's make our picks for the playoffs and who we think is going to win. Now, do we have a Super Bowl favorite? Does anybody have a favorite to win the Super Bowl right now? Packers?
Yeah, no doubt.
I am in. Okay. I am just along for the ride.
I wanted it to be Tampa Bay, and I'm going to go Tampa Bay.
I think for the ratings and everything, it would be quite amazing to see a Buccaneers and Patriots Super Bowl.
That's true.
But, that's
I'm going Titans.
But as somebody who lives in New England, I can't stomach hearing.
I can't stomach that.
These fans talking crap with a new quarterback too. So
EJ's picking the Packers as well. Okay, so let's go Raiders and Bengals. Who's winning that game?
Bengals.
I actually think the Bengals win that game.
Yeah.
Huge turnaround for that Bengals squad, by the way. And by the way, again, like what we talked about earlier too, like in the year, Jamar Chase clearly shut up the whole Penei Sewell and Jamar Chase narrative this year.
Yeah, holy crap.
Like, remember when everyone was complaining that he wasn't catching anything in training camp? Like, this is going to be a bust. All right.
He said it didn't have the white stripes in the ball.
Yeah, I was going to say, or he was complaining, yeah.
Raiders. All of you are banned.
Although that Chargers,
you are officially out.
Joe Burrow's lighting stuff up.
How much QB envy do you have for Herbert? My God.
How many of you were upset that Cooper Kupp didn't hit 2,000 yards? I was pulling for it the whole game.
Cooper Kupp is amazing, man.
Like, and then they go into overtime. It's like, come on, like throw him a 50-yarder. Let's go. Get him 2,000.
I played against him in fantasy football, so I hate him. They're like 14 seconds.
Patriots, Bills.
I'm saying Bills.
We're going Buffalo.
Yeah, I'm going.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
I'm going Pats. Pats.
I was kind of thinking the same thing. I'm going to go Pats on that one. Eagles, Bucks.
Bucks.
I'm going Bucks, yeah.
Niners, Cowboys.
Niners.
Maybe for the Broncos' sake, I'm going Niners.
Yeah, I'm going Niners too.
I'm going Cowboys. Steelers, Chiefs.
Quinn, okay.
Oh gosh, not even close.
Chiefs.
I'm going Steelers.
This would be
Cardinals, Rams.
I'm going Cardinals.
Sorry, Vaughn. I'm going
I see the
Cardinals.
Rams. Yeah.
I don't see neither of them being in very long. I'm going to say Cardinals. Yeah.
I think I'm going to go Rams on that one. What?
It's just a contrarian. Yeah.
Why the two of you picked the Rams?
Did you want to pick the Cardinals? Be honest.
No, I didn't want to pick either one.
You're as divided as the colors on your beard.
These are the kids right here. That's all kids.
I just had a flashback of the Family Guy episode with the when he's growing like the beard and he's got like birds in his beard.
I haven't had that yet. I haven't had that yet.
Yes, thankfully.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, yet is the key word there. All right, so that is going to about do it for us. Obviously, we will bring you more updates as we can with the coaching search and the interviews. You can also catch more on the Nothing Rhymes Orange and Blue podcast on Thursdays. I want to thank Bri and Cam for joining us on tonight's episode. You guys are fantastic. You can also catch Bri's caricature up on our social media pages. It's all on there. It looks just like that. Headphones and everything. It's pretty fantastic. But again, thank you guys so much for joining us. Where can people follow you? Cam, I know you got the Mainly Broncos podcast. Where can people find the podcast and where can they follow you?
They can follow it on any popular podcast site. Like I said, they can Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple, Google, Amazon Music, and you can follow me at Cameron Parker PO and the Seattle Kraken lost the Colorado Avalanche.
and see, Bri started her broadcasting career here on MHRT and now has blossomed and is on every single thing you can think of for the Broncos. So, Bri, where can they find you?
Fortunately, she hasn't forgotten the little guys.
Why do you think I'm here? Just kidding, Quinn.
Wow.
So you can actually find me all week just about. On Thursdays, I'm on 98.1 FM. That's Mile High Sports for the Fan Cave. You can listen on demand. You can tune your dial to it and hear me from 6 to 8 p.m. Fridays, I'm on the Halftime app with Lindsay Bibeau. That's from 6:15 to 7:15 Broncos time. You can also listen to us on the Orange and Brew Takeover podcast, and that happens weekly. The guys over there tweet that out. We'll be starting, something new soon, and so you'll know about that as well. I was just on Mainly Broncos last week, so you can go check out that episode. Me, Zach Seegers, and Joey Richards were able to fill in for a little bit. If you are not tired of my voice yet, you will be soon.
See, like I said, everywhere.
She's a superstar. She is an absolute superstar.
Everywhere. You can also make sure that there's going to be kind of some differences in the offseason. Like Bri's going to be jumping in and out. I'm sure Cam will jump in and out. Rich is going to be jumping in and out on the MHRT podcast just to kind of get through the offseason, get all the information out to you. So it's going to be exciting. It's going to be fun. And again, remember that we are now on Tuesdays at 7654, and the Nothing Rhymes Orange and Blue podcast is on Thursdays at 7654. Yeah, you should remember. He's like, are we having the podcast today on Tuesday, or is that after the Super Bowl? I was like, no, that's today. He's like, oh, I should probably try to make it home then. Yeah.
Thursday's schedule works out perfectly because you can listen to us, and then you can join Bri for her 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to go watch Tuesday Night Football now.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Listen to us and ignore Boggan's ridiculous takes.
How?
Oh yeah. How dare you? So yeah, man, okay. You can catch us live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch. That is going to do it for all of us before these two start fighting. So we're going to go ahead and head out. I didn't click on that. Why are you? Who did that now?
What? Did I do that? Sorry.
Probably because I didn't do it.
Sorry about that.
Glenn, how dare you? All right, so we're gonna end it with that. We love you, Broncos country, and we are obviously going to do the Mile High Five. Oh, Boggins, he did it again. See, every time. All right. Arms out to your side, and we say, high five! There we go. All right. We will see all of you on Thursday for the Nothing Wrong with Orange Blue podcast. Bye-bye, everybody.